You have a good 4th of July?
Welcome to the Productivity Power Hour. Hey, Ron, how are you?
Good, Don. How are you?
Doing good. Yeah. And this topic this week, in terms of talking about strategies for managing, your overall workload, but also, thinking about burnout. The term burnout is one near and dear to me, but at the same time, I mean, I don't know about how you feel about a lot of the stuff that you do, but I feel like as a consultant or entrepreneur, I mean, I don't feel like the hours really stop unless you stop them, right? And so you have to make very clear determination in terms of, parts of the boundaries of this, but also we should talk about corporate life as well, because both of us have lived on both sides. So, I think this will be an interesting topic to handle today.
Yeah, no, I like this topic. It certainly is different, burnout in the corporate life is versus an entrepreneur. Um, they both have their challenges and benefits. I think when you're on one side, you're always going, "Oh, the grass is greener on the other side." Until you get to the other side, then you're like, "Ah, the grass is greener on the other side." So it's always sort of like this volley that you do back and forth. But yeah, this is a great topic today. There's a lot of good things I think you and I can, and insights that we can share that can help people regardless of what side of the fence they're on, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I do think so. Maybe we could talk about, just to get us, kind of rolling first, in terms of burnout. Have you or any other employees that you have had have they experienced burnout? Because I think it's an important topic to talk about, because it touches very much on mental health, which I'm very in tune with as well. And you definitely think that you have to have some level of balance for people. But I'm just curious, have you experienced this before?
Yes. So me personally, I've experienced it when I was in the US Army. I experienced it when I was in corporate America, and I've experienced it as an entrepreneur. And really, actually, the three distinct times that it happened. And, going through that roller coaster ride, I really learned a lot about this topic and about some of the ways that you can mitigate and make yourself better. But I've also seen people underneath me, especially in the US Army. I was a suicide intervention specialist as well. And, I had several interventions where, as you start to talk to some of these folks, it's burnout, but it's so many things that sort of kind of come together at once. And it really affects their mental health. And, the way they think changes, the way they look changes, the way they behave changes. And there's so many different signs and symptoms. People underneath me in corporate America, I think, probably same thing. I don't think there was quite as close to the relationship like I had in the US Army. It was more actually my peers coming to me in corporate America and sort of learning about their burnout. um, and as an entrepreneur, I certainly have brought people under my umbrella and have worked with them. I've worked with clients, but mostly it's as I advise executives and help them from a consultation and coaching perspective. Uh, Sometimes they find comfort in me in sort of talking about their burnout and some of the things that are challenging to them. So I've really kind of experienced a lot of it personally and through other people. And like I said, I think it's it's really your physical changes, your mental changes, or your cognitive changes, your behavioral changes, your work performance changes. All of those things start to suffer, and when they all, kind of come to a head, that's really when burnout happens, and you're kind of in this hopeless or stuck place. And that's really where sometimes you need to hit bottom to know that you hit bottom.
Mm.
And then there's only one way to go up from there is up, but you have to get up and start moving up. Otherwise, you're just going to stay down there at bottom. So that's kind of been my experience. What about you, Don?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the same, right? So, I certainly have run into it a lot in corporate America, where people just, frankly, um, get worked and worked. I mean, the part that I love about our title, right, the rising above the grind part, is that the grinding is essentially where I sort of think that the this thought around burnout really starts. It's so everybody has, like, goals and objectives that they're trying to hit. Certainly, whenever you have stresses inside of your life as well, eventually you got to pay your bills, and you're trying to figure out how to balance all of these things. Plus, sometimes it's also the addition of whatever you have going on in your personal life as well. And so, to your point, I mean, I've seen people have physical external things that have happened because of burnout, and then also I've seen the positive side of this as well, where people through different tools, methods, and then also in on some cases medication as well can help with these with this challenge. So I feel like burnout can result in a lot of different ways, and it's not like aren't medical treatments for a portion of the symptoms anyway. And then at the end of the day, you've got to figure out, like, okay, so what are the steps sort of that you're going to take to move forward? But I mean, I've seen it go as far as people feeling like heart palpitations and things like that.
Yeah.
They feel like they're actually in cardiac arrest, as a part of, burnout and all of the stress that comes as well. And it's just really amazing to me that our mental state can do something to our physical state like that.
Well, that's exactly what happens, and it sort of becomes this cycle, this doom loop that just feeds on itself. So, if you're feeling burnt out because of work and you're working so many hours and you've got so much pressure on you, and it just gets to you, what do people sometimes do? Well, they stop doing self care. They stop exercising, they start eating worse, they start gaining weight, and now your body isn't as physically healthy. And then what do they also maybe start doing? They start getting frustrated and irritable. And then who do you take that out on? Sometimes your family members, your kids, your friends, and then you start to isolate yourself. You don't take care of yourself mentally. You don't give yourself breaks because you're so focused on working. So you're not watching movies, you're not reading, you're not doing these things that give you that break. Your behavior starts to change. Your decision making starts to get worse
Mm.
because you're in this state, and it just continues to compound on itself. And you know, what I was saying earlier about hitting bottom, you have to kind of come to this self realization that you're in burnout, like it's happening now, and not to be defensive or deny it, not to feel like it's a weakness to admit that, but you have to have that self reflection. Otherwise, you can't fix it. It's sort of like, I mean, you and I are lean guys, Six Sigma guys. You've got to identify the problem. You can't get better if you don't know what the problem is. And if and a lot of people, I think, when they get into burnout, and there's always one thing you can control is yourself. You sometimes can't control your external factors. Uh, there's some people at work that you just can't control that they're there. There's certain things in the world that you can't control. Certain things that happen to you physically or externally, but you can control how you think about it, how you react to it, and how you can get better. So ultimately, I think it's identifying that you've got that burnout and not necessarily pointing the finger at everybody else. Sometimes it does warrant a job change or to go from a cold climate to a warm climate or whatever it is. But I think more often than not, it's something that you're doing. And it's not pointing the finger at yourself and having this self-loathing thing. It's just saying, I need to make a change.
Yeah.
I need to understand, what's going on here. Otherwise, you just end up in this state of burnout. And I would see this in the U.S. Army a lot. Soldiers and leaders would go on one deployment, another deployment, another deployment. That's all we did in the aughts and teens. That's is just go places and serve. And you work on. You have one divorce, you have another divorce. You've got you're seeing men die and things like that. It becomes so stressful, and a lot of these guys were just too proud to seek help
Mm.
or to realize that I'm a gung ho soldier, because they were. I mean, they were the best, but you could see the burnout on them. I mean, you could see it on their face. You could see it in their life and in their relationships, and that's why I'm so passionate about veterans, because I really understand sort of the unique challenges of veterans in burnout that they get. I think PTSD is often overused. Not that it certainly is a thing, but I think other terms like burnout is appropriate as well. For soldiers. But again, same thing in corporate America. I mean, corporate America is driving this country. The work that we're doing, and sometimes we forget that these big Fortune 500 companies, they are America. They're the leaders of America, and what they're doing is critical. The medicines that they're making, the products that they're making, and people wear that hard. And there's initiative after initiative, that has to be done in order to get these patients what they need. And people wear that responsibility hard, and they forget to look inward and take care of themselves. So that's kind of my how I think about that and arrange it in my head.
Yeah, I mean, I think the same. I think the same as well. And you know, the more that you isolate yourself and sort of, you know, think that that it is something that, you know, only you can fix, or something that only you can feel, the more wrong that you are about this as well. Because I mean, oftentimes we carry it through to our families and others around us. And there's lots of
Hmm.
ways to deal with it. So I'm glad that we're going to talk about this topic, and really focusing in on, you know, managing, you know, that workload, and you know, just understanding that there need to be boundaries. And it's funny because as I was writing, I wrote a book called Overcommitted, essentially because I'm somebody who, you know, actually lived a good part of this as well, right? I mean, you know, I'm somebody that, you know, oftentimes whenever you'd look at my calendar, you know, I'd have 3, 4 meetings all stacked, you know, up on top of each other, and it's not physically possible to attend 3 or 4 meetings, um, and yet, you know, mentally trying to deal with, you know, portions of that as well. You know, I worked through, you know, my own technique of solving it, and wrote about it, and, you know, tried to share it with people as well.
No, that's great. I didn't know that you wrote that book. I'm gonna have to take a look at it. It's called Overcommitted.
Yeah, it's over my head on this side. That blue thing that's back there in the
All
back that you
right.
can't read the title of. It starts with yeah, overcommitted is the main
I'll have
title.
to get a copy of it. But no, I think what you said is you know, correct in that you need to seek help, and you know, others can help you through these things. And you know, if you just stay in this isolated place and you're afraid to ask for help, you know, you're never going to get better. And a term that I've heard used, I don't know if it's a term, but like seeking therapy isn't a sign of weakness, it's actually a sign of strength to do something like that. And you know, I think there's sometimes a stigma on burnout and mental health type of issues. But I think we're cut from the same cloth. You know, I'm kind of the same guy. I want to be able to do everything, and I
Hmm.
want to be able to be everywhere. But you can't be everywhere. You can't do everything. You know, you've got a wife. I've got, you know, 2 kids, with one on the way here in the next week. You know, I've got family members, friends. I've got a business that I run. You know, at one point I was in corporate America, but I was also, you know, serving as a reservist in the Army, and I was a leader, you know, of a construction engineering section. So I'm always doing things. You know, and it's a good thing to be ambitious, and it's a good thing to try to be prolific, but at what cost, right?
Right.
And there's some of these tools and techniques, like I think we're going to get into, you know, how can you manage your time in things better so you don't feel overwhelmed. You know, how do you delegate and things like that? And that's something I often see a lot of people that have burnout struggle with. They struggle with delegation, and it's usually not because they're not good leaders. It's
Right.
because they think they need to do everything themselves to make sure that it's done right. And ultimately, you know, you have to trust other people. You've got to be able to you know, sort of let go. So yeah, I think there's a lot of good things we can dig in here to today.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested in hearing your perspective in terms of this. How did, you know, what are tools that you've seen people use in terms of trying to balance the workload in the past?
So the one tool I usually counsel, you know, my clients on, or friends and family, is the Eisenhower matrix. I
Yep.
mean, just a simple. I mean, it doesn't get any more simple than that.
Right.
We all have a lot of things to do. So you first have to write those things down. There's no other way. Otherwise, you're going to feel buried, because that's usually where things are stuck. They're stuck in your head. They're clunking around everywhere. I got to do this. I got to do that. First, put it on paper. Let's be able to see the field that we have to till. So we have it all in front of us. And then it's just simply, you know, having that uh, matrix. You know, the horizontal axis is effort or impact. The vertical axis is you know, effort or impact, whatever one you want to do. And it's just simply quadrants, right? We do the things that are high impact and low effort. those are the things we do. Those are the things that are going to move the needle the most for us, with the least amount of effort. And actually, it's going to move more things because it doesn't take us a bunch of effort. And then once we do those things, now we're looking at high effort, high impact things and low effort, low impact things. Your low effort, low impact things are usually, if you have time, you can get to them. You push them somewhere when things are, you're not as strapped for time and you can do those things. Oftentimes it's the high impact, high effort things that people have trouble with. You have to sometimes do those things because they are very impactful, but you've got to be able to understand that it's high effort and be able to sort of put a plan together for that. If something's low effort and high impact, that's to just do it. We just do them. We don't need to quabble about it. We don't need to make a big thing. We just do them. The things that are high effort and hard to do, we've got to get a plan. The things that are low effort, low impact, we do them when we can, and we must, with every cell in us, avoid doing the things that are high effort and low impact. Those are those are the snakes in our garden. That's what kills businesses, and that's what caused burnout for people. And it's typically because there's a limiting belief, or there's just a wrong perspective on the impact of something, and it's usually because of emotion, or it's personal, or it's just something that's, again, it's a limiting belief. We've got to do this because we just have to.
Yeah.
My sister's and she's great. I love my sister to death, but my sister's a type of person that will, if something isn't perfectly organized in her life, she'll fixate on it. Whether it's an appointment or something like it, she'll spend so much time on something that has such little impact in her life. She's one of the smartest people I know, but that's how, and that's why she's so successful, because she is so organized. But, there will be this house burning over here, and she's, sometimes can be more concerned with, this clerical thing,
Right.
just because it eats at her in her sort of, need to have everything so organized. So I think the Eisenhower matrix is extremely powerful, not just to know and see it and go, okay, I get it, but to really understand it and to understand those quadrants and what they mean, and to have that self reflection and that self awareness of that. Oh, wow, I am stuck on this high effort, low impact thing. I got to drop it. Doesn't matter that I'm halfway through it. Well, I already built half it. You got to just be done with it. Go put out these fires over here. So
Right.
that's sort of the kind of key tool I try to rally people around, Don.
Yeah, it's funny. So the, I certainly, again, not to keep mentioning my book, but I wrote about the Eisenhower matrix as well. To start at the simple, in my mind, you have to establish boundaries. You have to have boundaries around work and boundaries around your personal life. And if you're somebody who is feeling the stress of, hey, look, I don't know exactly what to do with all the stuff that's in front of me, and you're trying to sort through that, the very first thing that all of us need to do is sort of step back and go, okay, so how do I establish a boundary so that I can, to your earlier points, one, take a little bit of time for self-care, but also to make sure that you're not letting the other side, go. Because sometimes, let's just say that maybe it's the family side that's causing the most stress and not your work life. There are times where you are going to need to do the same thing and sort of figure out a way to still have date nights with your wife, to still, go do things with your kids, to still, go do things by yourself. And we all need sort of those breaks and levels, and you have to establish, how can I possibly carry out whatever it is that I need to do in my work life as well as my personal life. One of the biggest challenges I think that we all have is the mobile device that we have, that constantly is in front of us, and we can all see the emails and other things that pop up. I'm kind of thankful, in a way, for the different level of focus modes, in the phone. I say if in a way because at times I've had people try and call me, and have not known that my phone was in do not disturb or something. So that's it can be a hindrance as well. Um, simple things like at work, either taking the work that you have and putting it in the Eisenhower matrix and try and figure out like where is the priority, where should my focus be, um, would help you sort of prioritize as well the work. I also color code my calendar. I mean, it's something that I started doing long ago in my corporate life, and somebody was looking at this the other day because they were troubleshooting on the CRM side. I'm having some technical issues, and somebody had
Mhm.
said, why are there all these colors? And I said, well, because essentially that means this, inside of my calendar, and so at a glance, I can see how many hours do I have focused on like direct external customer activities versus internal customer activities. And I can also see, new lead generation activities and things like that. So as a consultant, I need to be able to sort of break down the work that needs to happen. And it's my visual representation of that, to go back to our lean methodology. And then lastly, for people that are really truly feeling overcommitted, you started with this as one of the things that you mentioned early on, Ron, was just this idea that there's different ways that you can kind of offload the work, right? I mean, in some cases, we need to just sort of delegate that work and like get it off of our plate altogether. Maybe we shouldn't be doing it. To your point about fixating on certain things, I do get OCD about some things as well, and so I can resonate with a portion of that as well. But anymore, it's like, look, you can also automate things, you can reschedule them, or you can eliminate them just altogether. You can say, look, I'm not gonna do this or focus on this either at this point in time or maybe at all. One of the things that I heard recently was so I guess Jeff Bezos had at Amazon, he had said, look, we are focusing directly here at this particular point. And if he walked into a meeting, he essentially, I'm mistaking the name actually, is Peter Thiel. So Peter Thiel had said, if he walked into a meeting and somebody said, by the way, this meeting is about something else, it was not on the thing that he was going to focus on, he actually got up and left the meeting. I mean, focus became such an important part of what he felt like, would actually elevate a company. He actually, made it a determining factor for whether or not if he would actually sit in a room or not. And so in the book, again, to reference it one more time, yeah, I talk about the overcommitment dare. So that's delegate, automate, reschedule, and eliminate. So that's the overcommitment dare is sort of, can you, take the things that are stealing your time and attention and sort of reallocate them, which would also, help you manage this workload a little bit better as well.
I like that acronym. I'm gonna steal that from you, Don. No, it's good. I think delegation is it's really important, but a lot of people struggle with it. Uh, the best way I try to again, consult and counsel my clients and friends, family, things like that. When you talk about delegation, it's sometimes it is hard for somebody to say, "Hey, I need you to do this for me." They get sort of I don't know, trepidatious about asking people, to help them. But I found a good way to overcome that is, and I think it's in Dale Carnegie's book, How to Make Friends and Influence People. I think that's what it's called. But it's sort of this notion of win-win.
Mm.
So if you are always thinking win-win and you can articulate to somebody, well, first, if you're going to delegate, you need to find people that have a stake in whatever you're doing. And usually, it can be family, friends, it can be the people underneath of you at work, your direct reports, it can be your peers. Sometimes it can be the leaders in your business. And you need to find what this win-win is and where, people can help you. And as long as you can articulate to them, hey, can you help me with this because we win together? This isn't me asking you to do something and I'm taking your time or whatever. We're going to win together. if you do this, part, or you take this piece. So it's just a very simple way of repackaging, is you ask and articulate what you need somebody to do, and that, hey, we're going to get something out of this, you and I, if you do this. And oftentimes people respond better to that, than saying, hey, I need you to go do this. Especially direct reports, do this thing. Direct report. I don't know, why am I doing this? What does this mean to me? But hey, if you can do this, then it allows us to get here, and it's going to unlock this for us. So people understand that better, and it's sort of just like anything else. If you're negotiating, if you're in an argument with somebody, if you focus on win-win, people are going to want to work for you. They're going to allow you to influence what they're doing. So it's just an easier way, to delegate. As far as automation goes, to your DARE acronym, I am really digging AI. And the more I learn about AI, and I've actually got a service that I'm going to be going to market with here shortly with a partner of mine. But AI is just transformational in what it can do to automate tasks for individuals, businesses, teams. There's so many categories of AI tools and services out there. Before AI, there were automation services, but they were a little bit more complex to use, with Emerson and stuff like that you would have to contract with. But now automation is at everybody's fingertips, to the lay person all the way, to the very technical person. And automation is key now. People should be leveraging AI in several ways to help them. I integrate it into so many things I do now that save me time. And as far as reschedule goes, again, that's something that I think goes a little bit back to delegation, where people feel bad, like I have to reschedule, or somebody's going to think this of me, or they're going to think that. But ultimately, it's, you have to kind of get over that limiting belief. Some things are okay to reschedule, and oftentimes, if you want to reschedule it, the person on the other side might feel the same way. And if they don't, if it's important to them and not as important to you, then it's just a problem that you need to solve and work on them with. And it's something that you really actually have to get out in front of and fix. Otherwise, you're going to be in this constant state where something is not important to you and it's very important to somebody else, and you're not going to win together that way.
Right.
And that's where businesses oftentimes fail, because we want to do 1,000 things, and everybody's thing is the most important to them. They don't care about anybody else's thing, but everybody needs everybody to help.
Right.
So you have to untangle that mess and prioritize. That's where leadership comes into place in businesses, that help set priorities for people, that help them understand, sort of their sphere of what is it? There's a sphere of influence. There's 3 spheres. I can't think of them, but it's kind of, just on what can you affect, what can you influence, what should you be concerned about, just sort of focusing on what you can affect, and prioritizing. And then I guess to your last one on eliminate, yeah, I love cleaning the room. Get rid of the things on your calendar that are not important. You
Yeah.
don't, if you're not participating in a meeting, you don't need to be there anymore, especially with, now that we have AI and note taking and videos and stuff like that. Unless you are actively contributing to that meeting, you can just read the notes. I see so many meetings, and in corporate America, it's just insane to me, that you'd have these meetings with 10, 20 people, and there's really only 3 people talking
Mm-hmm.
and 3 people contributing. And everybody else is in there. They're on their computers. They're doing whatever. And you don't need to be here. If
Right.
you just need to know the highlights, because that's ultimately what it is, is I'm just here in case I hear something that's important to me, or in case I need to speak up. And if that's the case, then let's do it on a pull basis. You don't need to be here. Just be available if we need to pull you into the meeting for a question. And if we need something from you, we should actually get out ahead of that. That's why you have agendas. That's why you have things like that, to make sure that, hey, we don't need this person in every standing meeting, but we'll let you know based on the agenda that we set, it's a dynamic agenda if your presence is going to be needed. And we're going to put out minutes so everybody's aware. The meetings kill people. I think meetings burn people out. They feel like they have to be in them. They're not contributing. They're just sitting there listening. Companies that are good at having effective meetings are the best companies. So I'll get off that soapbox and turn it back over to you, Tom.
No, I don't disagree. I think you're onto something, because I feel like a good majority of our day is taken up by meetings. And again, if you're not a key stakeholder or contributor in the meeting, I think you should, question whether or not if you're actually needed or not. And if you are, then I mean, it's funny to me. So there was a company that I was working with a couple years ago, and there was one particular individual who frequently would not show up prepared for the meeting. And so I started booking additional time just with him. And so whenever he would show up, I would say, this time is actually not for me and you, it's for you. And so that you can prepare, because the next meeting that we do have later this afternoon or whatever, I need you to be prepared, because we can't walk into that meeting and have you just figuring out the subject and just figuring out at that point in time, exactly what it is that you need to do. And it's unfortunate to me, because the culture there essentially was that if I wouldn't book the time, this individual just didn't have time to do any level of research or reading or, sort of prep for the meeting. And he worked, all kinds of crazy hours as well, early in the morning to late at night. And I really, sort of question that at the end of the day. It's like, okay, so if you want the best out of your people and you want your people to be productive, at some point, somebody needed to look at this individual's workload and just maybe say, all right, so do we need to subdivide this into, I guess, multiple roles? Do we need to give some of the tasks to somebody else? He wasn't very good at sort of, ringing the bell by himself. And so, again, this is where I think as leaders, if you're truly, leading inside the company, you also need to be looking at your people. And when you see somebody continually sort of swimming in this soup of stuff to do, the question, I would have is, okay, well, are you getting the best out of that person, or are you getting like their second best or third, or, who knows? So,
Yeah, I mean, so what I tell people now, because when you're a consultant, that gets beaten out of you. Because when I tell people consulting is cutthroat, what I mean is it you have to deliver as a consultant. That's why you're there. You're not a W-2 employee. So as consultants, we have to show that we are doing something, and we're delivering something. Otherwise, why are we getting a paycheck? You're gone. And when I've consulted myself, I've consulted with some as part of some boutique firms. People come in and out of consulting very quickly. It's a turnstile for some people because they can't make the switch from that. Not everybody operates this way in corporate or W-2, but they can't make that switch. And I'll give you a quick example. I was consulting in a boutique firm, and I was leading other consultants. And there was this big project with a Fortune 500 company. We got a project manager. We put him on it. I gave him, everything I normally do with new people. You onboard them, you set the expectations, what they're going to do. But he was an expert, and it was a little more technical. And we set him loose with the client. And after a couple of weeks, the client was not happy. And I'm like, what is going on? So I talked to this guy, and he was billing 65-hour weeks, and he wasn't delivering anything. And I'm talking to this guy, who's a really nice guy. But he's like, I'm in all these meetings. They have me in all these meetings. What are you doing? Like, what are you doing in those meetings? Like, what's your purpose in those meetings? I have to, they told me to be part of these meetings. And like, that's sort of a W-2 habit where you're justifying your existence by being in meetings. And you might do a little bit of something here and a little bit of something there, or you're here when somebody needs something from you. But as a consultant, that doesn't fly. you have to deliver what was in the scope of work, and you have to be delivering. If you're part of a meeting, you need to have a purpose to bill that and be there. Why are you here? And you just can't be part of meetings and not deliver anything. You have to be contributing to it, documenting something with it. It has to be something as part of a deliverable. And again, people will they'll be in meetings, but also that creates that burnout where people
Mm-hmm.
think they need to be in these meetings, and you don't. You need to focus on your deliverables. What are the three things, or the five things, or the one thing that your boss or your company says is yours to deliver? You need to focus on doing that and moving the performance, getting the thing done, and seeing performance move. You don't have to be in all these meetings. You can ask for the highlights of the meetings. You can say, hey, just let me know if I need it in these meetings and I'm happy to be there. Give me 3 days notice. And then focus just on the things that are going to move the needle, for what your deliverables are. You're not, you know, they think it's a bad thing. They're feeding everybody the wolves. I'm not there. I don't think it's important. I'm going to hurt their feelings. That's not the case at all. I don't like people in my meetings that don't contribute. I don't like people in my meetings that are on their computer doing something else, because it means that there's something more important to do. If something comes up, get out of my meeting then. I only want people in this meeting that need to be here and that are contributing, because we are coming out of this meeting with something, not a good conversation. That's a nasty, terrible habit of companies, in that they just want to have good conversations. We need to come out of here with actions and next steps. It needs to be on paper, and there needs to be some form of accountability for it. Otherwise, you're just a W-2 employee that sits in meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting, and you're working 60 some hours a week, and you're burnt out. And really, you don't need to be in all those meetings. You just need to be in a quarter of them and focus on doing delivering what your boss needs. So again, I think it's those limiting beliefs from people, and it's nasty collaboration habits, Don, that really can burn people out, and that they have to do this or they have to do that. And the Army was big on that. That the Army will waste all of your time. They have this thing called hurry up and wait.
Mm.
You got to get there as fast as you can, and then we're going to have you wait here forever. So, when all of your time is preoccupied by non-value added things, it creates stress, and it gives you very little time to work on the things that matter. And when people can switch that paradigm in their head, I think it can unlock a world for them that isn't so burnt out. So, again,
Yeah.
I'm passionate about this subject, if you haven't already picked up on that. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think I guess I'd like to sort of break up the next two parts of our conversation down into to two things. One, I would like to sort of wrap up what you were just saying with regards to the um you know being in meetings and being involved in meetings, because I have a feeling that there's a level of oftentimes like decision making that people do in meetings, and there's a level of real engagement versus just sort of passive engagement. So I'd like to talk a little bit about that, and I would like to wrap up, because we're coming towards the end of this. I would like to wrap up with a couple practical things that people could examine in their own life and kind of decide you know how best to approach this maybe going forward, because I feel like if somebody's watching or listening to this, it's more or less based on the fact that they're feeling some of this as well, as they go forward in their professional life. So maybe just get us started off, right? So what a lot of this discussion has brought back for me is a very small company. So let's say the company is 20 people. When I started. When I left, we were 250 people, right? So we'd sort of escalated that hiring and things like that. What was interesting to me was the decision making and participation in meetings had not changed a whole heck of a lot. And we were having a lot of discussions with the senior executive team about, look, you know, every decision no longer can really roll up to you. And what's interesting to me is my very next engagement, I was with an organization that was 10,000 people, and all the decisions, all the financial decisions, 100% of them went to the CFO. And it was an interesting sort of thing to sit there and go, okay, so here we were, a 250 person company, and we were having in-depth discussions about how do we sort of push decision making down, and how do we have decision making levels and things like that inside of a 250 person company, versus now 10,000 person company, and the CFO sitting there reviewing, $10 purchase orders. And I sort of was absolutely shocked by that, but I also think that it is a corporate problem across many different companies, and it will drive people to be in meetings that don't have to be there as well. I mean, because if they have to be there for the decision, then they're going to sit there essentially as a meeting spy up until the point that a decision is needed, and then all of a sudden have a whole bunch of things to say probably at that point in time. So how have you approached that? What have you seen in the past? And I guess I'd like to explore this a little bit further for the next couple of minutes, and then we can flip over to the practical tips.
Yeah, decision making is a make or break for companies. I mean, it's the same thing with meetings. Companies that struggle to make decisions and waste time with decision making, they're never as effective as companies that are really good at it. I like the simple, rapid model for decision making. So when companies have a decision mess, right? When nobody knows if it's usually nobody understands, was a decision made? Was it not made? Are we committed to it? Because after a decision usually comes resourcing. You have to resource it with time, with dollars, with things. You have to commit to that. And I've been in so many meetings where we thought we made the decision, but ultimately we didn't, because we didn't know there's somebody else that there's some stakeholder that's blocking it, or we aren't clear, is it this sponsor or this sponsor that makes a decision. I like the rapid model. I think it's something very easy to employ. You can employ it at different levels in your company, and it basically stands for recommender. So who are the people responsible for recommending the decision? Approve. Who are the people that are approving that recommendation, saying, yep, we looked at it. It looks good enough to put in front of the decision maker. Then who are the people that are performing on that decision? Like once it's made and we say yes, who are the people that are actually going to now take that decision and do something with it? Who are the informers of the decision? So who are the SMEs that we need to have at this, to help us with some of the detail around the decision? And ultimately the D is the decider. Who is the one person, not two people, the one person that I'm telling you, that's what well, we both have to know one person. You can have somebody, you put them in an approver category, but you usually have somebody that is collecting the options for the decision. So they're collecting the options and they're going to make a recommendation based on the inputs that they got. And, that recommendation is going to be who they think should perform it. And ultimately, you've got somebody that says, hey, we approve this. This looks good to put in front of the person making the decision. So it's kind of a way that when it's tangled up and not knowing, or no, there's two decision makers. No, actually one is approving it. One is putting their stamp on it saying, I like this or don't like this. Because now the decision maker knows, okay, these two other sponsors or key stakeholder, two of them approved it, one didn't. I'm overriding that one. We're going with this.
Right.
But at least I know what they whether they approved it or not. So it's just sort of a simple model for people to use. There's all these tools for decision making. It's ridiculous. If you go Microsoft Teams, you can find all these decision tools. If you can't do it manually, if you can't just do it in a simple way, those tools are never going to work.
Right.
Everybody's looking for a decision management tool. And it's, if you can't delineate roles and responsibilities of decision makers, those tools aren't going to work. Those tools are for high volume decisions in your company. that you need to organize around. So that's usually how I think about it.
Yeah, I do like, I mean, also there are certainly project management tools that allow you to capture, decisions and when decisions were made and things like that. I feel like a lot of them are very beneficial, especially when you have to trace things back. I also feel like companies that do this well, the people that, are inside of companies and they have, different kind of decision levels inside of the company. So, hey, look, if it's a non-financial decision and it involves this scope, then anybody can make this decision. And then if it goes to, okay, so it's going to impact some of our financials at the end of the day, if it's going to impact, our product, or maybe, the quality of the product, or the, possibly be an audit risk, for us for the future, given kind of our, our industry that we oftentimes, work in as well. I mean, all of those things, kind of influence the decision making capability. But at the end of the day, there's no reason why you couldn't have set boundaries where you could say, look, let's not involve the highest levels in the organization, especially for a very large organization, in the very lowest level of things that should be able to be, decided, at any one point. It seems to me like it's a complete waste of resources. It's also probably going to involve, way too many people, at that point in time, as well. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you said it earlier with, an executive looking over a $10, sale or purchase order or something like that, that it's just not, there's no benefit in that. Just one fun, quick example. When I was in big pharma, I remember distinctly we were in this one meeting and we were talking about what to do with this chromatography resin, and it wasn't a lot. It was actually, just a couple liters worth. It wasn't that expensive of a resin, and it had been used like halfway through its cycle. And we were arguing about it for almost an hour in this meeting. And at the end of it, I think it was the supply chain director said, "I think all of our salaries in this hour exceeded what the cost of what we're trying to salvage here. We need to be better in the things that we're prioritizing and the decisions we're making, because and it sort of became just a decision around the process or how we did, but it was really just focused on that one a piece of inventory. So again, if you've got a sales order or something like that, or a PO that's coming through, it's good. Hey, anything over $5,000 needs to be decided on by the chief revenue officer, or anything over 10,000 or whatever, however big the company is, right? They can't be looking at little insignificant things. Delegate that decision making down to somebody where economically it makes better sense.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's talk about a little bit about practical tips for a minute. I have kind of my short list that I'll run through, and then I'd love to hear, any of the items that you have as well. So to go back to the Eisenhower matrix for a second, if anybody Googles Eisenhower matrix, you'll quickly find an article by Asana. It's one of the best that I've ever seen in terms of like detailing out, exactly how to leverage the Eisenhower matrix. And then you have to put it into action. So, I mean, the steps to put it into action are not that hard. It's sort of thinking about what sort of things do you have on your to-do list, and where do those things fit in the 4 quadrants that Ron talked about earlier. And to me, it's a very balanced way of sort of figuring out what are the priorities. So that's certainly one. I mentioned color coding your calendar. I honestly, in a lot of cases, I will color things yellow that fit in that category where I have the least amount of impact, but it's a very sort of, task that probably pretty much anybody could do. And I've done this for years, where those things sort of, they stand out then, where it's like, why is this even on my calendar? Why am I doing this? Why isn't either somebody else? Why haven't I sort of used the overcommitment dare to try and figure out another place to put it, delegate it, automate it, et cetera. And so by sort of, working through that, I normally have less and less of those sort of items in there that are really called out on my calendar. the last one that I'll mention really quickly, that I mean sounds kind of ridiculous, but at the same time I feel like it has a very dramatic difference in your day, is by one, setting sort of those boundaries where, what hours do I work, what hours do I claim as personal time, and things like that, starting at that point. But then also leveraging a technique like the Pomodoro technique, where you set a timer for a certain period of time, whether it's 25 minutes or not. I frankly wouldn't care. I mean, I don't really, sort of subscribe just to the 25-minute mode, because I've talked to people about this before, that I feel like there are times whenever we get into a focused state, and sometimes it may take you 25 minutes to get to a focused state, and then you will have just started, really doing the thing at that point in time. And it's a shame, to kind of break, the cycle at that point in time. So whether your focused, time, leveraging the Pomodoro technique is 25 minutes or not, set up some sort of schedule where you're going to say, I'm going to have work sets of 25 minutes, 50 minutes, whatever they are, and then I'm also going to have breaks, and in those breaks I'm going to completely separate myself for that period of time from whatever it was that I'm doing. You can't still set at your spot where you normally do your work and continue to work. You need to get up and like move in that period of time. And by doing that, you'll start to notice a little bit of a difference in terms of the potential of maybe the level of work stress that you have and other things, also change in those states as well. And so by having those time periods, it really helps, as well. Ron, how about you?
So I think the one thing that is a good tool to use, I guess maybe it's a tool, or maybe it's a series of tools, but it's essentially three things. You write down everything that you need to do over a year's time. So you write down your annual tasks, you write down your semi-annual tasks, your quarterly tasks, your monthly tasks, your weekly tasks, and your daily tasks. Once you have that done, this is how the U.S. Army does things, and I was a strategic planner for the U.S. Army. It's really this simple. Once you have that, now you create two calendars. You create a calendar that's static, and it can be monthly or it can be weekly. I recommend weekly for folks, but that calendar is for the most part going to stay the same. I do this every week. I do this every day at this time, this time every week. So it's kind of my, standard work calendar, and it's static. Then you have a dynamic calendar. And, in the Army, we would do this stuff, to very professional to a T, but, whether you're planning 30 days out, 60, 90 days out, you're coming up with your new monthly calendar. And that monthly calendar, you're simply taking all the things on your annual, semi-annual, quarterly, monthly list, and you're putting them on your monthly calendar, and you're ticking them off of your list. So next in annual, you're going to have one box. It's a tick. Bam, boom. I can fit it right here. So basically, you're always using this static calendar that keeps the train on the tracks. And then you've got this dynamic calendar that's fed by all of the things that need to be done to make you successful, but you've got flexibility in every monthly calendar that you create. It might be a tough month because of something came up, so you have to push some things out, but you can get them done later in the quarter, or you can get them done later in the year. But it's a very good way if you're a business owner and you are overwhelmed with all of the things that you need to do. I mean, my wife says it best: make a list, right? Make a list of all of those things. She doesn't quite go into this detail, but break them into those time categories. Have your static calendar, have your dynamic calendar, and make sure you go through that monthly, or whether you do it quarterly, planning session with yourself and your people to put those in and then tick them off, so you've got accountability. That's the simplest way to get your arms around what sometimes seems impossible to get around, and it keeps you focused. The only other thing I would say, it's not really a tool, but for burnout, and just sort of being healthy is you have to be healthy mentally and physically. You have to have both. The body needs the mind needs the body. What did Morpheus say in Matrix? Like the body cannot live without the mind or something. It's true. So you have to take care of yourself mentally. It's a strength to seek therapy if you need to. You need to take time for yourself to read, to watch movies, to let your mind relax, to exercise your mind, whether it's puzzles or hanging out with friends and things like that. And then physically, you've got to be physically active. And I know this is a touchy subject with people and they get defensive, but you've got to be physically active. It doesn't mean you have to get a gym membership and go to Planet Fitness. Whether you like to golf, whether you like to walk, whether you like to chase your kids at the park, whether you like to play softball, find something that you can do on a recurring basis that makes you active. And finally, probably the most touchy one is your weight. You've got to have a healthy weight. If you're not in a healthy weight, your body, every bone in your body, every joint is stressed, and that stress will wear on you mentally, and it will get you to burnout more quickly. If you can just take care of your mind, your physical activity, and keep your weight manageable, you are so far ahead of the game. And there are people that and I know it's a struggle sometimes with burnout happens. You let one of those things go, but you've got to have that self-awareness to whether you're not getting physical activity, whether you're gaining weight, whether you're not spending time with your family, not reading, not doing your hobbies. Those things are going to contribute to your burnout. So that's my last thought on that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that as well, Ron. And so just to wrap us up here, if you have liked this topic and you're watching it on LinkedIn, please do leave us a comment and let us know, your thoughts in terms of, how you manage your workload and avoid burnout. The second thing is, if you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe, and then also leave us a comment there as well. But yeah, Ron, thanks so much for joining me in this. And if you want to get a hold of Ron, you can go to, is it propellantconsulting.com? Is that right?
Yeah,
Or find him
Propellant
on LinkedIn.
Consulting. It's as simple as propellantconsulting.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, Ron Eggert. You can find my LinkedIn page, Propellant Consulting. Once you get there, there's 1,000 ways to get a hold of me.
That's great. And for me, if you want to contact me regarding things like this, then you can certainly go to improvingprocesses.com or certainly contact me on LinkedIn as well. Those are probably the two easiest ways. And thanks a lot for watching or listening. And thanks, Ron, for joining me. I appreciate it.
It was my pleasure, Don.
All right.
Take care.
Thank you.